You are a plucky young thief living in a city made of wood, located over a gigantic hole called the Wound. Like all smart-mouthed thieves, you have a trusty friend that you die for, some younger friends that you can care for deeply, and somewhere, sometime, there is a war happening. You are Jack, capable of basic magic to go pew pew with. As a character, you actually plan on avoiding the draft for the war, while Lana, the best friend, plans on happily joining the fight because of reasons. We don't really know her reasoning beyond loyalty and wanting to get rich. Somehow, of course, as things start looking pleasant enough, something goes wrong. At first, one of our friends returns with a gift and a massive hole in his stomach. So Jack and Lana must go get some magic from a noble's house to try and heal him. Or something. They're not clear on the plan. Now the big motivation happens. Roshan, the bad guys, attack our little wooden town floating above a giant hole. Our friends, all younger than us, one legit being under the age of 10, gets blown up. Like legitimately, we see that happen. You are now seeing that happen too. This, to say the least, angers both Lana and Jack. Lana gets blown off the side of the town, and that causes Jack to lose control and use all three types of magic at once. He fires and kills everyone trying to kill him. Fortunately, the leader of the Immortals, Kirkland, this lady, saves us and helps us control the magic. And there you go. You are now part of the war. Welcome to Aveum, soon to be immortal. So let's just roll the intro.
Swagger down the street with your red lips and funky beat. You better hold your head up to the sky. I'm gonna roll with you till the day I die. Hey, swing those hips around. Can't stop, roll back down. My ladies, short, tall, thin or wide, always down and ready to ride.
This game. I remember when this game was announced at the 2022 Game Awards, which is ironic because I still confused that with E3. Anyway, initially the game looked to be a new RPG type of game with an open world that would wow us. Then we learned more and that there is a very railroaded story we'd be following. Of course, having had only a shit PC at the time, I thought the graphics of this game looked fantastic. And let's be honest here, the motion capture of the faces look fantastic, unlike a certain other EA game that is set to come out in 2024 in a few months. Dragon Age the Vanguard, Barrick looks to be in slow mode. Yeah, so the game released more or less on time in 2023, with only a slight delay to refine some things, which I would have to say they should have delayed a bit more, not just to miss the Baldur's Gate 3 hype, but to refine some things even further, because damn, this game needs so much refinement. Before I get too into it all, I know, it's been 4 weeks since the last review video, and frankly, I just took a vacation. Kind of unplanned, mostly because I'd rather spend time with my family than all of 148 of you? When we reach 148 people. Anyway, let's just talk about how this game handles. If we were in a closed room with Jack fighting things that spawn off screen and an infinite amount of healing, this game would handle like a race car on the Nürburgring. The 3 spells we have on our right arm feel almost exactly like a gun, without all of the downsides, but also some of the downsides. It's hard to put into words exactly how it feels using your main weapon in this game. Let's start with the colors, because there are 3 of them and they dictate every other kind of weapon you have. Blue is the basic one. It has a long reach, can shoot anything from 1 to over 12 times without needing to reload. Red is like a shotgun. Rarely do you get more than 8 shots, but shots can't reach very far. They do fortunately have a wide area of attack and can pack a punch like no other weapon. Green is like a minigun, most of the time. You can sacrifice how many shots you can take to increase its strength, but why would you when some of the options gives you over 100 shots? These are the 3 basic types of attacks you have. You get different arm band thingies that change how they attack. For example, you can have a red weapon that shoots 1 single shot but does nearly 400 damage. Or have a blue that shoots 12 shots but does nearly as little damage as the green arm band thingamabob. These can also be upgraded using money and shards, both of which become progressively easier to get as the game proceeds. The last bit about them is that they have other additional abilities that change how you use your other abilities. These are important to a point, but also get offset by the skill system. Next, we need to talk about the fiery magics that Jack can use. There are 6 in total, 2 blue, 2 reds and 2 greens. Each one has a special way they work, and you will need to do some exploring to get the special ones that aren't given to you through the story. Initially you get the blue fear attack for free. This is a rock wall crawl thingy that shoves into enemies that are on the ground and blasts them into space. Useful for enemies with shields or when you need to stagger something. In total we have Bash, Time Burst, Torrent, Vortex, Shatter and Blast Wave. Each one uses fairy mana. Each one is quite strong and can be upgraded through the skill tree. I'll be honest, initially I rarely used these skills, as just shooting whatever was in the way seemed to work the best. As I upgraded and refined them, they started being the go-to things I used. This meant that I would combo them to manage not just large groups of enemies, but the boss fights as well. Add in the Dominion attack, which is a combination of all 3 colors that Jack can use that auto attacks whichever enemy you are aimed at. You can pack quite a punch within a short amount of time. Further, with the items that we can use, the control spells, namely the Lash, the Limpets and the Disrupt, or as I call them, the Lash, the Slow Time Blobs and Red Laser thingy. If you are aware enough, controlling a battle can become a lot of fun. Genuinely, at times I went into a flow state where I successfully juggled enemies while healing, casting spells and shooting larger enemies to stagger them to prevent them from staggering me. But this seems to be about all I can really say I enjoyed about the gameplay. There are several aspects that are hindered by the duality of what Immortals of Aveum tries to be, an open world game with strict lines that you have to follow at all times. There are no side quests or quest tracking at all for that matter. There's just the main quest, and the game will try its hardest to ensure you are railroaded straight into it. The maps are built to serve this as well. Yes, you can stop progressing the story to go and explore an abandoned sawmill or something else, but the quest marker will try its utmost hardest to get you back to where it needs you. Which, from a story perspective, the quest marking and tracking is honestly fantastic. But from an exploration perspective is simply frustrating, as you lose track of where you were going when the interface suddenly and violently updates to redirect you. The leyline travel, while initially a good idea, quickly made me sick. Mostly because I was now traveling extremely fast over terrain that could not be generated fast enough. Add on to this a combination of unoptimized gameplay and a limited FOV slider that had to be added in after the game had already launched. Seriously? Have you tried going at 100 miles an hour, zooming across the world, while the cliffs, roads and even speed bumps before you are popping in and out of existence at a rapid pace? I did get nauseous at some points, causing me to avoid this type of travel at all costs. Now, the traveling with these ley lines is actually important, since when you can actually ignore the quest marker, there are many locations on all maps that you need to explore, each of which is hidden behind some mechanic or puzzle that you have to solve, all of them being slightly too frustrating to really bother with. The best I can equate it to is Hogwarts Legacy. In that game, I explored every nook and cranny, because every part was filled with lore or something unique a developer wanted me to discover. In Immortals of Aveum, if you explore what you discover, it will only feel like it was put there because a developer had to pad out the gameplay, or at its worst because they did not want you to get to the best piece of equipment without a hard fight. Something that you catch onto as you slowly but surely lose interest in getting all the hidden things the game has to offer. Instead, you buy all the upgrades you want from the store, which there are plenty of. Unless you want every achievement the game has to offer, you will rarely find yourself seeking hidden upgrades. What's worse about this is that by the time you reach many of these hidden pieces, you already have gear or upgrades that far outstrip the usefulness of these items. Yes, I know I can go and hunt the Shroud Fanes, but why would I when the store offers legendary items for sale already? The last piece of gameplay that I want to touch on is the only piece that I have no issues with, the skills menu. I would not call this innovative in any way, but it certainly was a joy to use. Not only because the skills are extremely complementary to each other, but they have immediate practical effects on the way you play the game. This meant that throughout my playthrough of Immortals of Aveum, I was excited to actually level up. A rare achievement for a railroaded RPG with a very short story to tell. Not only do the skills complement each other well, but some of the better skills you can unlock requires you to have similar levels in requiring skill trees, which may sound frustrating and would be if there were hundreds of skills, but here Immortals of Aveum shows a limited hand, which meant working through the skill tree was a genuine joy, from changing how attacks function to how much each attack returns to you. If I would play this game again, it would purely be to max out the skill trees to see just how strong Jack would be by the end of the story. But as it stands, the gameplay of Immortals of Aveum is severely hindered by a few dark spots, and also the limited story and the characters that we meet along the way. Initially a simple story of avenging dead friends, the story very quickly turns into one of confusion, like each part feels written by a different writer that wanted it to go just a little bit longer. In fact, Immortal of Aveum's story could almost be split into two very different, extremely short games. Before I just launch into all of this, let me introduce everyone. We have Jack, the main character. Then we have Kirkin, the commander of the Immortals. Next, we have Zendara and Devon, the only other two Immortals that are still part of the Order. Wait, I forgot about Orphe, who is a seer, who is a them, they, we, us. For me, they look like a woman in multiple places in time at any given moment. You can tell how important they are to the story, which is to say, after a certain point, they just kind of disappear entirely, and had a hell of a time finding them again. I didn't, by the way. After the Immortals, yes, there are only 5 of them in existence. We look at side characters. Kenzie, a last survivor of Oromon, which is an entire civilization that somehow blew themselves up by believing magic is for everyone. Thaddeus, the previous commander of the Immortals, who turns into an increasingly pivotal character nearing the end of the game. Then we have Rook, the Aelori, we'll get to them, leader that eventually joins our side to save the entire world of Aveum. On the bad guy side, we have Sandrak, the main evil villain. Also previously an immortal, he is of Rashan descent. He is also the idiot number 1 in the whole story of the game. Along with Sandrak, we have the Hand of Sandrak. Spoiler warning, by the way, for this next part. The Hand of Sandrak is just Lana, who defected to their side because she saw what Kirkin did to the whole population of Rashan. In the minor character section of the story, we have Hauser, Silas, Salka, Fife, Babs, Caleb, and a very small selection of named characters. Like seriously, Sandrak has 2 named generals that work for him, and apart from the Hand, who we learn is Lana, the other one is only ever called I can't find his name, and for the life of me I can't remember it. It's the Morbane. Literally, I had to search this fight up just to remember his name. That's how bad it is. I'll admit, it is a cool name. Anyway, that's literally it. Those are all the characters in the game, and if you exhaust the speech options with each when they appear, you can't talk to them at all. Half of the characters are only in the game for short portions. After Kenzie, who does look awesome by the way, is done with her work, she is never seen in the game again. That very long and surprisingly ranty section over, we can talk about the story. Except, I won't. Instead, I'll try to summarize it in as few words as possible. The world is slowly being eaten by the wound, which is caused by magisters using too much magic during the war. The war was caused because no one can decide how to stop the wound from growing any larger. Roshan, therefore Sandrak, is attacking Lucian and is always close to winning, but never quite winning. Jack sees the hand of Sandrak get a stone. This stone can control the fonts. The fonts are what lets magic into the world of Aveum. The Immortals need to stop Sandrak from absorbing the fonts. Jack learns there is a way to also control the big magic MacGuffin stone. The Pentasod, or the god of this world, whatever, likes Jack. Keeps sending him back to Aveum when he accidentally goes to the spirit world side where the Pentasod lives. Sandrak gets control of all the fonts and kills Devon, our closest friend within the Immortals. Things go from bad to shit. Sandrak believes the only way to stop the world from being swallowed whole is to kill the Pentasod because he has decided that the Pentasod is actually a demon and needs to die. Jack and Sandrak go into the otherworld space, kind of find the Pentasod. We learn that Rook and all other Aelori are meant to siphon magic back, stopping the wound from growing larger. Sandrak goes fully insane. He wants to bring the Pentasod to Aveum to kill him properly. We say not to, have the Aelori help and stop the wound from growing. Kirkin disagrees and wants to be a dumbass again. We overthrow her ass, finally. You can tell I was so annoyed with her by this point. We go find Sandrak one last time. This would be fight number 3, by the way. We get him weak enough, and the Pentasod finally kills him for good. There are not enough Aelori to properly siphon the remaining magic. There are too few of them. So Jack uses a secret final spell that all immortals have to use when they die, that heals the magic and stops the end of the world. Jack basically dies, but the Pentasod fortunately likes Jack enough to send him back, so he survives. The story ends with only 2 immortals left, Jack and Sindara. That was genuinely as compact as I could make it, and I still left out about 50 things that happened in this game, because the only way the story ever progresses is by someone, somewhere, revealing a big secret that Jack did not know about. So obviously, at each point in the game where we make progress, we are told some big new revelation, which grows so old so quickly. And I love that Jack actually says that too. In fact, one of the reasons he starts ignoring his commander is because she keeps not telling him things, and he yells in her face about it, which honestly was really cathartic. I said earlier that Sandrak is an idiot number 1, and I will reveal the other 2 biggest idiots in the game later on, but that is it for the story of Immortals of Aveum. Honestly, if this had been an animated series, I think it would have done fantastically, but as a game, it did only okay. It wasn't boring specifically, but in no way did I find myself up at night wondering what would happen next. Let's then move on to the thing that it does both well and shittily at the same time. Mainly the second part. The motion capture on the actors of this game is simply fantastic. Like, even in non-cutscenes, these characters were shining examples of what high quality graphics can do. The emotions were clear and easy to read, instead of making me feel like the characters had just swallowed a fly in their coffee. So then, why do I also say it was shit? Because of the fact that even with the best top-end computer, I don't think this game will ever run buttery smooth. As awesome as aspects of Immortals of Aveum looks, it is poorly coded in areas that it's worrying they ship this game at all. I say this because my computer can play most modern games at ultra or near ultra graphics. The screen I use is extremely old, running at full high definition only. Yes, but also only at 60Hz. This screen was bought in 2011, which for any modern gaming system is a walk in the park to accomplish, especially since most are made to try and buffer at the top end of graphics, namely 4K 120 frames per second. So why, do I wonder, would a game tell me that my computer can only run it at the lowest of settings? It took me nearly the entire game to figure it out too. Everything that you see, and don't see, is being rendered at the same time. This quickly explained why when I was in a cave area my game ran smoothly, but whenever I entered any open area the game started to stutter. And stutter it most certainly did. while the game does have a specific render distance, everything that you see in any one area is fully rendered at all times. And you might be wondering, Sock, you're not a game dev, how could you possibly know this? The simple answer is that at the center of the world is a massive statue of the Pentasod. Most people would miss it really, because it's only important at the end of the game, which is a part most never reach. But you see, at the end of the game, gigantic rocks start swirling around it. Now, if you are in a building or one specific map in the game, these things are not visible, so the frame rate is perfectly okay over there. However, during the last portion of the game, you spend a lot of time outside, and would you look at that, there it is. Giant statue, giant rocks flying around it. Normally, these would be pre-rendered and would be a looping video. In Immortals of Aveum, your system will be rendering each and every single rock that you see. Which is why, dear watcher, even with the best of systems, your computer will struggle to run Immortals of Aveum at full tilt. That should round out the section of graphics pretty nicely. The game looks fantastic, honestly, it does, but it also requires you to sacrifice so much that your poor computer will want to jump off the desk to end it all. And with that happy note, let's take a look at the really bad things. Have you ever met someone that yells at you for making a decision in a moment? A decision that no one else could make. A decision that at that time, with the information that you had, was the best you could make. Welp, Kirkland and Lana, or should I call her the Hand, are people that will refuse to tell you anything at all. Then the very next moment they will yell at you for being a complete buffoon for not knowing anything at all. Near the middle of the story of Immortals of Aveum, I had gotten so frustrated with any cutscene that included Kirkland that I legitimately stepped away whenever I could. Fortunately, her voice actor clearly required a high pay because she goes away for much of the second half of the game. Lana, who is our enemy for a very long time, does something similar. She'll ask you not to do something, and when Jack asks why not, she'll ramble off about him not understanding or not knowing without ever actually telling him anything. It is so bad that when she does eventually capitulate and tell Jack why she defected to the people that killed all her friends and blew her actual house up, Jack no longer cares, which he rightly shouldn't, because by that time the world was in danger of completely being destroyed. Further, their motivations make little to no sense. Wait, no. Lana's makes little to no sense. Kirkland is so clearly also just a power-hungry fanatic from the start that the motivations for really doing things is clear to anyone but the other Immortals of Aveum. Lana, on the other hand, she fights to save people by killing people, while spewing how good her side is, something that I can honestly say Jack stops doing. Because from the start, Jack does not agree with being what he is. Instead, he vehemently makes it clear he hates Roshan for killing his found family. He doesn't care necessarily who did to who before that, so when Sandrak turns out to be exactly the dictator that even a blind fly could see, he gets rightfully angry at Lana for still defending him. You know, even when Sandrak put out a wanted poster with her face on it because he wants to kill her too, while she is defending him still. One of her lines is,
"Museum and everything? Free tuition?"
1. Don't ever knock free tuition. 2. I renounced Lucium when I found out why Roshan desperately needed Magni. How awfully Lucium and Kirkin have treated their enemies. You and your friends pretty much worked for the bad guys, Jack.
But let's forget that right now and move back to Kirkland. She is the commander of the Immortals. The Immortals are
Jack of the House Unforeseen, newly mantled Immortal, champion protector of Lucium, Master Magnus of the Order Elite. What words do you have for those under our command?
and they see themselves as the good guys, except Kirkland seems to only make decisions based on her own selfish wants and needs, which yes, I get is part of the story and what we need to learn. However, her decision making and the constant fetish she has to not tell Jack anything is really weird. There are several points in the game where if she told Jack all the information she had, he would have made a much better decision not just for himself but also for her. Instead, multiple times, including our first actual mission, she sends him into actual war zones and then gets mad when you had to make a life or death decision. The one and only time I agree with her being all mad at him was when he chose the glyph to control the big magical MacGuffin stone. He should have chosen to destroy it, but of course, then we would not have had the entire second half of the game's story. This is bad writing, in my opinion. A first draft of events planned out by more than one writer. When the plot seemingly revolves around our character just not knowing specific things, then something is wrong. And it happens over and over and over again. Thaddeus, he'll tell us things happily, but only once we get to him. The same with Sandara and Devon. They share information and Jack reacts and responds to them, except when the characters randomly decide to go talk to Kirkland. She has to tell you, only for Kirkland to not tell us anything. You can tell I'm feeling heated about this, mostly by the fact that this is all a script that I'm reading from and it still feels like I'm rambling about this. But honestly, it's the best way to express just how bad this gets throughout the game. Each new decision that involves either Kirkland or Lana focuses on the mere fact they admonish him, after he already had use of the information they kept from him. The only saving grace being that Jack eventually gets fed up with all of this too. Before the final act of the game, he admonishes Lana for not telling him she was alive. He admonishes Kirkland for keeping all her secrets and even making decisions while knowing certain things about the world. A trait I can honestly appreciate, because it felt like some lead dev went, why the hell have you written it like this? Now, that should be enough. There are other hundreds of tiny small things wrong with this game. The bad things I talk about are story related, specifically because every streamer, their mother and their children have talked about the technical difficulties. Yes, even a year after release, or close to a year, the game still has micro stutters, frame drops, weird POV, and the other issues that plague it. These are things inherent to how the game was made and may never be solved. So, now that you know my biggest issue, we can talk about don't play the game. Instead, search YouTube for one of those people that like to talk about games and their complete stories. It should save you a few hours of frustration. In no way is Immortals of Aveum a bad game. It's just not a good game either. Leaving Baldur's Gate 3 out of the discussion, there are many other games that have done everything Immortals of Aveum has done, but better. If you want a good RPG experience, hell, go play a Dragon Age game. If you want a good open world game, even Skyrim, as old as it is, does a better job. If you want a game that blows your socks off graphically, just get either of the Horizon games. Hell, get Forza Horizon would look better and run smoother than this. If you want a game where skills and gear and everything else interacts in a complicated mess, get Diablo or Path of Exile or Pillars of Eternity. Hell, if you want to, go jump into the list of indie titles that are out there. Most would be better than Immortals of Aveum. This discussion becomes even more one-sided when we take a look at the price of this game. It is $70, which is an absurd amount for a game like this, feeling almost purely driven by Electronic Arts wanting to release a new game in this genre, which they didn't even do, they only published it. The saddest part about Immortals of Aveum is that it would have done fantastically as a game with a price of no more than $30. In fact, it would have been applauded as a great value game, with a story well worth the price. Instead, it was given a price tag of $70 on release, making its competition much greater games. Games like Baldur's Gate 3, which it never had a chance of being in the same room in. So now, I would never recommend getting Game Pass specifically to play Immortals of Aveum, but I would recommend getting Game Pass if you are curious, since it is significantly less expensive to get Game Pass, and once you have finished this game, you can actually wash out the bad taste with all the hundreds of other games that are much better on Game Pass. Thank you guys for watching this video, this review of Immortals of Aveum. Like I said at the start, I went on like a short vacation basically, and it took me like 2 weeks to recover and like do everything properly. I also no longer have a doggo. Long story, not gonna tell it now. if you watched this entire video, please like and subscribe. Like, I could really use a subscriber. I've got a Patreon, link below. It's not that important, but I would really appreciate somebody like actually going to the Patreon at least to say like hello. I've got like 0 people there. If you want to support me in more of these videos, that is the way to go. Or just simply liking, subscribing, and spreading the video around. Really, just like send it to your friends that you think would enjoy a 30-minute rant about a game nobody played. Yeah, so basically, like always, I'm thinking, that's why I'm looking over there. I'm also making sure that the audio is like properly recording. Thank you for watching, and as always, I love you more than the next one and more than the previous one. Ciao.